I know lemon juice is a good alternative for
brilliant.
salt. Are there any other alternatives that you know about that you would like to share with everyone?
Fresh herbs is also a wonderful way to add flavor to a meal. Things like I just mentioned, the ginger, a bit of garlic, and then also things like unsalted spices.
Okay.
Things like a curry mixture that doesn't have salt added to it, or cumin, or coriander, or paprika, are spices that don't have salt added to them, and they add lots of flavor. The other nice thing that people sometimes forget, and that's a nice tip from my side as a foodie, is to say, look at the cooking methods that you use. If you're making a soup and you start off by sauteing onions and leeks and garlic and ginger in your saucepan, and then you add the rest of your ingredients, you already have lots of flavor. If you were to saute cumin seeds or a bit of curry powder with those initial ingredients, then you already have more flavor and you don't need to add so much salt. The other thing is that people need to taste their food before they add salt, because if you did go that route of using fresh ingredients, the right cooking method, often you find that you don't need salt, or if you do squeeze some lemon juice over it, then you don't need the salt. And if you can teach your palate not to expect such a salty flavor and rather get that from fresh herbs or a nice ingredient like lemon juice, then you gradually find that you actually do prefer a not so salty flavor.
You're making me hungry.
Yes.
Now, the South African government has created legislator to monitor the salt levels in products. How do you think this is going to impact the health of consumers and people in South Africa?
It's a wonderful initiative and something that's really important. I think a lot of people don't realize that something as basic as bread, shop-bought bread, has very high salt levels in South Africa. Yes. The moment you start reading the label and you realize how much salt is in a slice of bread, and if you think having peanut butter or cheese or something salty on there, then it's quite a big chunk of your allowed salt for the day is already in just 1 or 2 slices of bread. So the fact that there is legislation, and it's not just pre-prepared ingredients like bread, but even some of the supermarkets are starting to say our pre-made meals that we sell to people, we're looking at the salt content of those as well. So it must be a nationwide way of changing it. And I think it's a wonderful initiative. That's the only way that we can get people to learn gradually to get away with not so much salt in their diet.
And South Africans love their salt.
Unfortunately, we do. Yeah, lots of processed foods, lots of pre-prepared foods, lots of takeaways, and salty snacks is something that South Africans love a lot. I mean, if you just think of biltong, such a South African,
that's what popped up in my head.
Yeah, so we're not saying don't have biltong, but buy one that says lower salt content. Read the label, be aware of what is in the food that you eat, and in the end, it's to your own benefit. It's not for the sake of anybody else but yourself.
Now, when we speak about reading a label, what are we looking for? Because sometimes those labels don't even make sense to your average everyday Joe out there. So
and
what must we look for?
That's part of the whole initiative around salt, is that labels become more specific in the information that they provide, and also user-friendly. A lot of e-codes doesn't mean anything to anybody, so the legislation around making that as easy as possible to understand is very important. There's a couple of things that's normally on a label: the carbohydrates, the protein, the fat, the salt, the sugar is supposed to be indicated as well, all the preservatives. So in the first book, and it's also available in Cooking from the Heart 2, we give a little guideline of those important ingredients and say these are the levels that they should be when they're moderate, when they're low, when they're high. So that if you know that that's more or less where you need to be, then you can read your label and say, ooh, if I have too much of this, I'm going to be way over my salt content. And labels should indicate the amount of salt, if we take that as an example, per 100 grams of food and per portion size. If we take peanut butter as an example again, a portion of peanut butter is about a tablespoon. So I'm not going to eat 100 grams of peanut butter at a time, but it does give you that indication so that you know, half the bottle contains so much, but one portion that I put on my sandwich or my toast also has X amount of salt in it. And there are brands that has less and more salt or sugar or fat or whatever the ingredient is that you're looking at in it. So if you know what you're looking for, then it really makes a difference to read that and be aware of it. That's the main thing.
All right, so say I eat a lot of salt, and after this conversation, I really want to cut back and I want to have my teaspoon a day. What's my first step?
Eat as natural and as fresh as possible. Avoid pre-prepared ingredients like packets of soup powder, snacks like a packet of crisps or a takeaway. Avoid those. Rather opt for unsalted nuts, fresh fruit, a homemade meal that you pack for lunch instead of going to the cafeteria. So if you can try and eat so that you know what went into that food, you're on a good start. And the moment you start with that and you feel the difference, then it becomes easier and easier to maintain that. And that's the big thing. It has to be sustainable.